Hey everyone, I'm Virginia Foley, founder of Compliance Forward. Today, I'm joined by senior consultant Jason Cober. This is the Promotional Intelligence podcast where we connect to discuss the latest trends in pharma and biotech advertising and promotion. FDA has issued close to 100 enforcement letters since September 2025. And we've seen a substantial number of these letters targeting oncology products. Today's podcast, we will explore the FDA's policy position on time to event endpoints and single arm trials, the common violations among the recent oncology compliance letters. And if you stick around to the end, we'll talk about why this is important for all regulatory teams, even if you don't cover oncology products. Hi, Jason. From a regulatory standpoint, why is this set of letters particularly important?
Hi, Virginia. So it's a really great question. And there are a few things that stand out with these oncology letters, not the least of which is that this strategy appears to be very effective on the part of the agency. So we've seen over a dozen of these letters that cite the time to event violations in the oncology space. And while not all of the enforcement letters that have been issued to oncology products since September 2025 have cited time to event violations, many of them do. And that's really important because these letters represent a continuing enforcement strategy on the part of the agency that predates the September 2025 announcement of the crackdown on DTC prescription drug advertising. That suggests a couple of things. One, that this is a durable enforcement strategy, but two, that this trend is not transitory. But what's even more important for all regulatory teams is that whether you work in the oncology space or not, we could possibly see this strategy evolve over time to target other therapeutic areas.
Interesting. So let's just level set here what we mean when we say time to event analysis. Sometimes I've heard them referred to as survival analysis. It's a set of statistical methods used to analyze the length of time until an event of interest occurs. So basically measuring the duration from a defined starting point, like the treatment, the time clinical trial starts treatment, to an endpoint, whether it be death, a relapse, or even progression of disease. So, can you explain the issues with the time to event presentations? And is there a common theme across the letters?
Sure. So all of these letters that cite time to event violations, they were issued for products approved under single arm trials. That's the common thread with all of these letters. Many of the products were approved under accelerated approval, but not all were. Some are standard approvals that were approved under a single arm trial. But regardless of the approval pathway, these are all single arm trial products. That's particularly relevant because the agency has a well established policy in the oncology space regarding the interpretability of results from single arm trials. In all cases, the letters are citing presentations of endpoints that are not included in the approved product labeling. So companies have been attempting to present this data as CFL, and the FDA is actually signaling that these presentations do not align with the CFL standards.
That's so interesting. So, CFL being consistent with the FDA approved labeling guidance, we're finding ourselves at the intersection of clinical trial design and then CFL. So, as an evidentiary standard, SAS can still be somewhat nebulous, not well defined. The agency is helping us out here, providing us with another data point to show us where the line is in regarding CFL and SAS. So, it's a lot of acronyms, a lot to unpack. Can you start by talking about the agency's policy position on the time to event analysis endpoints based on single arm trials?
Yeah, so the short version is that the agency holds the position that single arm trials cannot support time to event endpoints. And they say as much in their guidance. The agency has published two guidances that speak directly to this topic. And we've actually published a couple articles on the Compliance Forward blog that discusses it a little bit more in depth than what we're going to talk about today. But the first guidance to talk about was one from 2018, and it's a final guidance. So that means that it represents the agency's current thinking on the topic. But this guidance was actually published originally in its first version all the way back in 2005, so almost 21 years ago. And the guidance is titled Clinical Trial Endpoints for the Approval of Cancer Drugs and Biologics. And it's a great resource that covers the agency's thinking on all aspects of trial design for oncology products. But the important takeaway here from that particular guidance is, one, the guidance makes it very clear that single arm trials cannot support time to event endpoints. And two, the guidance goes on to say that you need to have a randomized trial if you're going to support time to event endpoints.
Okay, that seems pretty clear cut and dry, but you mentioned a second guidance. What's that all about?
Yeah, so in 2023, the agency issued a second guidance, and it expands on the topics and the recommendations from the 2018 guidance. The March 2023 guidance is titled Clinical Trial Considerations to Support Accelerated Approval of Oncology Therapeutics. And it's important to note that while it is a draft guidance, it doesn't yet reflect the agency's current thinking, and it won't until it's finalized. But I think we can infer from the number of the compliance letters that are coming out that they are actually enforcing on the recommendations in this guidance. Specifically, this guidance discusses the efficacy endpoints that can be used to support approval through accelerated approval. So they highlight a few things, specifically on objective response rate or ORR in combination with duration of response as the primary endpoints that the agency is looking for in single arm trials. And that makes sense from the perspective that in the absence of a control group or a comparator arm, the potential anti-tumor properties of the drug are going to have to be evaluated by observing the objective effect that the product has on the tumor. That is, that the product can either shrink the tumor or eliminate it entirely.
Okay, that totally makes sense in terms of good guidance for sure. Are there any measures that are discussed in the guidance about what should not be used?
There are. And the guidance notes that stable disease should not be included either in composite endpoints or presented in combination with ORR. It also reiterates the agency's position on time to event endpoints, specifically, and this is the really important quote that I want to read. They say common time to event and efficacy endpoints in oncology are generally uninterpretable due to failure to account for known and unknown confounding factors when comparing the results to an external control. FDA considers such endpoints exploratory and not adequate to be used as measures of efficacy in single arm trials intended to support approval. And that's really important because this same language is coming through in the compliance letters that OPDP is issuing. So we do see a pretty straight line from this March 2023 guidance to what the agency is issuing in its compliance letters.